Hey guys, in this video we're going to look at equilateral and isosceles triangles. Okay, so with isosceles triangles, we know that that means that they have two congruent sides, and that also means they have two congruent angles. The important thing to remember is that the sides that are congruent and the angles that are congruent have a specific location. So when you're given an isosceles triangle, the first thing you want to do is highlight the vertex. And so you can see up here that I have gone ahead and marked the vertex angle in blue for you. What that does is, once we can find our vertex angle, then we know the other two angles are the base angles. And the base angles are always congruent. Okay. And then once we know our base angles, okay, the base is between them. So we have one vertex angle and one base, which is a side. The other two then are going to be your legs, and the legs are also going to be congruent. So two congruent legs, two congruent base angles, and then your vertex angle and your base go opposite of that. Let's actually make that blue so those go together. Okay, so when we look over here at this diagram, they tell us HG is congruent to HK. So I'm going to find HG and mark it, and it's congruent to HK. So remember, the tick marks tell me that they're congruent, and I know that this is part of triangle HGK. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish my triangle here so I can kind of focus on the one in the middle. So now they're asking me which angles are congruent. So again, here's my isosceles triangle. So I know that if I have two legs here, my base angles are going to be down here. So that tells me that angle G, or angle HGK, is congruent to angle HKG. Now notice I can't just say angle K because I actually have three angles here. So I have to be very specific on which one I'm looking at. Okay, let's go to the next statement. If angle KHJ, so KHJ is this angle up here, is congruent to angle KJH, that would be this one down here. Okay, so now I'm looking at this triangle on the right, and they're asking me what is congruent. If these are my two congruent angles, then I know that my sides, my congruent sides, have to be these two sides, okay? So KH is congruent to KJ. Notice, notice that my vertex angle of H is opposite of the base, GK, and my vertex angle here of K is opposite the base, JH. Okay, equilateral and equiangular triangles are actually quite a bit easier because everything is congruent. So all the angles in an equilateral triangle are congruent and all the sides are congruent. Okay, that makes it pretty easy to figure these out. Now the size of the triangle can change, which means the side lengths are going to determine how big or how small our triangle is. But the angles are always going to be the same. And remember, we have that 180 rule for equilateral triangles. So if I know A, B, and C all have to be the same, I could say x plus x plus x equals 180. That gives me 3x equals 180. So I know all of my angles are going to equal 60 degrees. And this is true no matter how big or how small your equilateral triangle is. The angles will always be 60 degrees. So if we look at the example over here, okay, we can see that they tell us that this is an equilateral triangle because of these congruency marks here. They don't have to tell me anything else. So because of this, I can conclude angle P, the measure of angle P equals the measure of angle Q equals the measure of angle R, and they're all going to equal 60 degrees. Okay, now on this triangle, they tell me that it's a equilateral triangle by telling me that all of the angles are congruent. And they're telling me that this side, TU, is 5. So I can conclude SU is also 5 and ST is also 5. Let's look at some examples. Number 1 says, find the value of x. Okay, so my 2x is right here. Notice the degree sign. That tells me that this is an angle. Okay, and I know it's an equilateral triangle because I have 3 congruent sides. So some things that I see, it's equilateral. I know that my angles equal 60. 2x is in an angle, so I'm going to say 2x equals 60 degrees, which means my x is going to be 30. Not 30 degrees, 30. Okay, let's look at the next one. Find the value of x. Notice my x is in a degree, or is in an angle again because of the degree sign. But this time, I only have 2 congruency marks. So this tells me that I'm looking at an isosceles triangle. Okay, so that means that if the vertex angle is 130, I know my base angles are congruent. So this angle is also going to be x. Now, if my vertex angle is 130, okay, so we've got a couple ways we can do this. You know that all of the angles, they all have to equal 180. So you could say x plus x, or 2x, plus 130 equals 180. Subtract your 130. You get 2x equals 50. That means my x equals 25. Okay? Or if you look at this and say, if my vertex is 130, I can take 130 from 180 and get 50, and I know that the 50 degrees has to be these two x's together. So you could also go straight to this step and tell me x is 25. Either one of those would be correct. Number 3 is a little bit more of a complicated problem. They're going to ask you to find x and y. So let's look at one at a time. I can see that my triangle up here, we'll highlight it in green, is an equilateral triangle because I see those marks, which means all of the sides are going to be congruent. So if this side is 40, then 8y is 40, and this side over here is also 40. Also, if the two congruent sides have two different expressions, we can set them equal. So we would say 8y equals 40. Because this is an equilateral triangle, I know they're all going to be congruent. So then y is going to equal 5. Okay, so there's my y. And then over here on this triangle, okay, if we have two sides that are 40, we know that those are congruent, which makes this an isosceles triangle. So we know that the base angles are also going to be congruent. Now we have to figure out what is our vertex angle up here before we can figure out the two down here. Okay, I know this angle is 60 degrees because it's an equilateral triangle. So if I take 180 minus 60, I get 120. That is actually going to be this vertex angle right here. Okay, so I know that x plus 120 equals 180. So 2x is going to equal 60. So that x is going to be 30.